Hi, this is Rick Harsh. This is my booktube, and this is my weekly newscast, The Writer Engaged. And as I did last week, I have The Guardian right above your head. It's a standard newspaper that's probably got more in it than most U.S. newspapers. I don't get the New York Times. But that's okay. It's Eurocentral, so and it covers news from around the world as well. I'm going to start right now with the first story, which is titled "Like a Blowtorch: Mediterranean Gripped by Wildfires as Blazes Spread in Croatia and Portugal." That'll be a theme for today, and will probably be a special news forecast at some point because we're talking about climate change. There is no magical defense mechanism, says Greek Prime Minister, as fires burn in northern Africa and southern Europe. A further story is about the anger of people on the island of Rhodos because this is tourist season, and that's yet another topic that I'd be interested in talking about, the global tourist industry, which is a bizarre um, um, example of the wealthy world um, inflicting its values and sometimes bankruptcy of values on other places. In Europe, it's often the Mediterranean, and there are plenty of islands where local people would just be grateful if a lot fewer people would visit, and there's more murder, violence, um, more drunkenness than they. It's the behavior of the drunks that disturbs people, because these are often places where drinking, like Spain, is a heavy drinking country, but relatively peaceful. Um, so rowdy Brits are a cliche by now, but if they're in Rhodos right now, they're um, probably pouring their drinks, around themselves to keep the flames away. Um, the oh, Kevin Spacey, the actor, was cleared of sexually assaulting four men. When I read that, I thought, well, uh, we'll see how he's treated from here on, because I think charges like those against him will follow him forever. Finding him innocent in a court of law will probably not um, uh, very quickly help him rejuvenate his career. But they found me innocent. Ah, fuck off, Kevin. We got somebody else for that part. Um, Donald Trump, ex-president, to return ancient Israeli artifacts held at Mar-a-Lago. Um, your question, is, I'm sure, is the same as mine. Is what the fuck were they doing there in the first place? Ancient Israeli artifacts held at Mar-a-Lago. Do you want to know what they were? Let's see if the story tells us what they were. Ceramic oil lamps and coins are listed. Um, let's see if they have any others. No photos to show you. Um, let's see. Hmm. How did they get to him? They ended up okay. The artifacts, which include a set of ancient coins and ceramic oil lamps, have been at the estate since December 2021. Maybe he was going to use the shekels to pay for the insurrection. No, wait, that was June of 2021, so that was afterwards. No, so timing doesn't work out. They ended up there when the Republican donor Saul Fox gave them to Trump at a Hanukkah party at Mar-a-Lago. How bizarre. Yeah. what the rich do. If Saul is often a name used by Jews, so we have to presume that Saul was Jewish, but not a very well, a practicing, not a practicing Jew. I mean, does a practicing Jew hold on to artifacts from archaeological archaeological importance? I don't know. And well, you don't care about football, so we'll leave that. Oh, here in the United States, live UFO hearings. Republicans claim we're going to uncover the cover-up as Congress examines spacecraft claims. Well, you can read that on your own, but there's an article that says explained UFO hearing, what to know and how we got here. Well, I'm not there, so I'm you know. Then, of course, we have Russia, Ukraine. The EU is going to ban exports of battlefield equipment to Belarus. The Wagner Group just went to Belarus, and maybe they're afraid that the Wagner Group is going to be the center of an assault on Kyiv. It's pretty close, and that was the intention of the Russians at the beginning to win the war. They would quickly take Kyiv from the north, and I think a lot of people were surprised that they were unable to do so. And my man on the ground, who is not in Ukraine anymore, but who was there, said very simply that the war is going a lot slower than he thought. But the main thing is that it's the process of defending is a lot slower than the process of attacking, and so that's the failure of the Russians to attack as quickly as they like is now something that the Ukrainians are experiencing. The difficulty in retrieving their land from Russian possession is going more slowly than they thought. Now, there's more from the United States because with UFO hearings, we know that there's a lot of other stuff going on. There's on the first couple of pages, where they're just given little photographs and maybe I can show it to you. That's what it looks like, and those all you click on those and you get the full story. If there can be a full story, what would be the full story of a UFO? The U.S. Congress looking into UFOs. There are two on Barbie. One says Greta Gerwig responds to trolling from right-wing critics. Greta Gerwig, I think, was an independent movie actress who, I guess when I was young, I would have just said straight out, sold out. So let me just say she sold out and is making this incredibly strange thing called a Barbie movie, and why it's so popular, and the whole even Oppenheimer by I don't know. I don't even know who's making Oppenheimer, who made Oppenheimer, but you know, I I don't trust that that movie will really do much to have an effect on people's view of nuclear weaponry, and you know the which is something back to Ukraine. What makes that such a horrible thing is the looming threat of nuclear weaponry, something that uh, the United States and Russia failed to eliminate. And you know, speaking of bizarre, the entire arms race was bizarre. Um, you know, we all know that two bombs went off. We don't all know how many times Russia and the United States bombed themselves. I don't have any record of the Soviet tests, but the United States bombed itself 1,070 times, if you don't count the Pacific atolls, because they were actually bombing islanders, or the homes of islanders after they removed them. I think usually they removed them, and then they put their own soldiers there, and you know, to study the effects of the bombs. So 1,070 times the U.S. bombed itself. That's you know, I didn't intend to do a plug for my book, The Manifold Destiny of Eddie Vegas, but that each of those is listed in one of my Rabelaisian lists. The joke of which is that this one is not Rabelaisian in at heart, because every single they're in order too, in temporal order. Every single one, I use the name that the military gave to the test, and I use the real name, and it reads like a crazy Rabelaisian list. So that's a fun part of, and a very quick to read part of The Manifold Destiny of Eddie Vegas. So back to you know, randomly looking here, we see Russia, conscription age limit raised as it seeks to replenish forces. Well, you know, one thing I've not known much about, and have come to understand and believe, is that Putin's popularity in Russia is not as poor as Western media would have it, because the standard of living under Putin has raised a great deal since the trashed 90s economy. And so he's actually a great deal more popular than people realize. You know, if any country is used to an autocracy, it's Russia. So if you're going to have a king or an emperor, if he can at least, you know, make it easier for you to buy food, then, well, that's one thing in his favor. But they won't like this very much. I don't know how much information the average Russian gets about the war. I believe it's probably a great deal more than is portrayed. You know, this is a country that had a great network of samizdat, underground literature, during its Stalin-esque years. And so I believe that there's a great deal of knowledge about what's happening in the war. And there's probably more support for it than is realized. But usually people who support wars, other than, for instance, guerrillas like in Vietnam, most people who support wars are idiots. And so, and they support them for all the wrong reasons. Look at Tony Blair supporting the war in Iraq. Utterly insane. The war and Tony Blair, ass-licking British Prime Minister. The bombs won't stop us. Business brisk at Ukraine's surrogacy clinics. Now that's interesting to me. Russia's invasion has not deterred hundreds of foreign would-be parents from traveling to war-torn Kyiv and other centers. Now that's interesting. So if I understand what it's saying here, I could probably summarize it by saying women in Kyiv get a lot better care than women in Kentucky and Louisiana and Texas and how many more states, I don't know. That's another one. This is a bit scattered today, isn't it? In the Netherlands, one killed and several injured as cargo ship catches fire off Dutch coast. It's not something often discussed, but the number of fires on fire is actually one of the top dangers on board commercial vessels. I can come back with statistics on that if somebody shows interest. There was something I wanted to come back and discuss this week that I mentioned last week, but luckily I can't remember what it is. I'm not going to read every single one of these. In fact, I'm going to move on, there's the use Norse mythology with Caroline Larrington. 60-minute masterclass. There's that fucking cliche masterclass again. Jesus Christ. There, as I looked through this the first time, I just looked through briefly, and what struck me, here's something. We have never seen this. Scientists baffled by behavior of pilot whales before Australia mass stranding. Environmental minister says the whale pod crowded tightly together 150 meters offshore before becoming beached is unique and pretty incredible. Does that have something to do with climate change? Probably. It's got to be pretty bizarre. Florida ocean temperatures similar to a hot tub. Unprecedented. Gulf Stream system could collapse as early as 2025, study suggests. So that was what disturbed me the most, and with a quick glance, was the climate change, and the politicization of it, and the failure, of course, of the main criminals who pollute for profit to do anything, and which is not surprising. It's an endemic oligarchic problem, and I cannot see that it would ever end in time. It's an existential problem. It's a tough one for the business person. Do we keep making the same amount of money now and risk extinction, or do we look ahead and eat the losses and bank on controlling the climate, the healthy climate technologies? If they could, you just put it in their hands and say, you got to do this, but we'll let you still make this percentage of profit, then maybe they'd do it. I don't know. There was something else about. Oh, I have to. Never mind. I was thinking about something else that was occurring in the maritime world. I'm editing a paper on the problems of mental health amongst mariners, and one thing that has not. It doesn't look like it's in the paper I'm editing. Is any mention of wages of mariners compared to profits of the companies that employ them, the big ship owners, and and I would imagine. Well, they did find one interesting thing. All the common things that are known about the problems of being on board a ship, like being far from home and things like that, are not the main reason that more and more people are looking to get out of the maritime work industry. Uh, uh, they they're not, it's not bad weather. It's not, that kind of thing. The things that you'd think of, like, oh Jesus, can you imagine being on that ship with those waves? And it's not that. It's a lot of other causes. One of them is called vibration, and I haven't yet looked into that. But I believe it's kind of a, like, not so white noise that and that probably comes from the engine room. I imagine that being on board a giant ship these days is you find it very hard to get peace and quiet. So the lack of they are talking about the problem with circadian rhythms being disrupted. Asinine shifts and things like that. That's a problem that seafarers face. Another a problem that European ship students of shipping, potential sailors face, is competition from countries where that produce refugees and sailors and shipbuilding workers. We have one of the biggest in Italy is near us in Monfalcone, about 40 minutes from here, and the shipbuilding company employs a large number of Bangladeshis, and so it's actually a great place for me to go get groceries because I can get good stuff to make Indian food. I can get hot chilies and fresh, and it's not that far away. And well, it's changing the look and culture of the city. Sundays are beautiful there. You see the colors that Indian women wear. These are Bangladeshi women, but they wear the same as women from all of Bengal. And these are people who are hired because they'll take less. And on board ships itself, Filipinos are notably common seafarers, and have been for some time because they'll work cheap. And I've often wondered why not Indians, and I think it's because India's program shipping business is older, and it was not founded by the British. The Indians could build their own ships; they had no problem with that. Even large merchant vessels, and so they probably don't see the same advantage in taking work on European vessels. But the European giants hire a lot of people at low wages, and the port that's about 7 kilometers from here, which is in a town called Koper, or it used to be called Capodistria. It was an island, and it's very near Trieste, and it's the last seaside town, more or less. Not exactly, but close. And it's the last old one. And it's a small place, but it's in service as a port for an entire nation. And I've always, they cooperate a lot with the university I used to work with, and I've taught there. I've always been able to get a lot of information about that place. And not too long ago, if you don't know shipping, it's hard to imagine the scale of big ships, like the size of a hold in, let's say, a bulk carrier that carries bulk grain and or anything, iron ore, whatever. They're enormous, and when they're in port, there are enormous grabs that pull everything out of there, and people have to go down in there. They have to be cleaned, because various products go in there, and you can't always mix, and you can't just leave. Even if your next pickup is grain, you should clean it out. Well, one of the grabs hit a worker about 5 years ago. I don't know how often they have accidents there, but one guy was killed about 5 years ago. And a friend of mine who was working there at the time told me that he was actually from Bosnia and was working for €3 an hour at the local port. The corruption in the shipping industry is on a par with the corruption in probably all giant industries. So that's the news for today, because I'm not going to go to Africa, where I'll need to spend more time preparing and also catching up on the news. But after talking to a friend who was recently in Chad, there's a lot to talk about. Not just the famine in Somalia, but also the war in the Sudan, which has already driven at least 200,000 women and children across the border to Chad, which is a place that really cannot easily and economically feasibly and without great risks and health take care of that many people. So it's a crisis for NGOs, and even my friend described his own circumstances. He's with an NGO, and so he's getting paid well. I saw on Instagram the other day, somebody was talking about the problem in Somalia, and an idiot responded, I wonder how much your suit cost. Well, my friend who works for the NGO lives in a large French city that's very expensive, and for him to do his work, which requires being in this city and going out into the field as well, which is what he enjoys the most, going out into the field. To hear him talk about being on the Congo it's worth a second read of Conrad. You get just as much from him and his stories. It's dismal. And of course, he got sick, badly sick, in Congo. Um, Maybe life threatening, I don't know. But in Chad, he just talked about basics like how to get water, how they got water, and how they got water to their places. They had to hire a cook, because there it was. Um, well, you have to be very, very careful what you eat. In India, I've been there many times, and it's the same way for me. I'm not immune from much of what you can get in India, and so you know the food would have to. I couldn't buy um, uh, food sold on the street that other than something I could peel like a banana or a coconut. I could put a straw in and drink it. Um, but I only had a few major problems. You can read about those in The Appearance of Death to a Hindu Woman. That's another commercial for one of my books. There's a long section there about the effects of a cyclone, um, and metaphorical effects of the cyclone, and the effects of being a white man in a formerly white man colonized country. They're sort of a Montezuma's Revenge section, a long train ride, something I've always been really, really pleased with. But that book doesn't sell much, and so I don't I don't actually try to sell it very much, but I do have it. This is a 10-euro book, and it's one of the best things I've ever written, I believe. It's a nice introduction by David Vardaman. Um, there's the back. That's in Chennai, and that's the goddess Kali. And the real theory of tantric yoga is presented in this book as a sort of parallel to Western philosophical ideas that are pessimistic and dark, and but not cultish. And the true tantric, just to go off on this a little bit. Tantric Hinduism involves what they call resacralizing the mundane. And the idea is that in this age of Kali, this last great age, that the human being is too weak spiritually to rise to the gods. So we have to bring the gods down. And so they have ritualized, Tantra ritualizes 5, well, I guess the easy way to call them are sins, like fucking. And so you ritually fuck. And there's nothing erotic about it when you read about the rituals. You have to, the spiritual and ritualistic work that you have to do would probably keep most Westerners away, if they were required to engage in the actual Indian tantric Hindu ritual. You also eat forbidden food, but you go through the same sort of process of repeating mantras and so on. And so that's what it is. I also explain, and this is what's worth saying, because most people have the confused notion that Maya, the concept of Maya, which is central to Hindu thought, not just tantric Hinduism, but all advanced Hindu philosophy, is Maya is an important concept, and it's generally mistook as illusion. So many people believe that Hindus believe that the world is illusory, and the what the actual story about Maya is that there's we we are very complicated beings, and we sometimes it's a psychological point more than anything. We might see there's a great explanation of Maya in the story told by the philosophy Shankara in about the 9th or 8th century, and it's this here you know if you see this lying on the road, there are some dangerous, colorful snakes. One is called the McClellan's coral snake, and it is very much like this in pattern. And so the serpent and the rope explanation of Maya is that when you see that you're about to step on this, which is a handkerchief, but you see it rolled up, and you have fear that it's a snake. During those moments, the fear is real, and when and the concomitant almost opposite is true as well. There's a if you approach a snake and mistake it for something else, your blissful ignorance is also real, and so the world offers appearances that are not real, and yet when you react as if they are real, then you're living in an illusory state for that time. And you can look at that, and I think that could explain a great deal about the United States right now, don't you? The politicians are gripped by Maya right now, and they on very very many levels. It's impossible to believe that people like Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell and Jim Jordan. Well, I don't know. Maybe you don't know how stupid they really are, but you know already by a couple of interviews from years ago, you can find out that a veteran politician like Lindsey Graham may be a scumbag, and he may not care much about humanity, but he's not dumb. And so there's a sort of a voluntary entrance into the Mayan or Maya-esque delusion that allows for someone like that to be a coward when it comes to the Trump cult-like politics. So that's my lesson for today. If you made it this far, congratulations. You're one of probably two. And the other will be me, because I got to check and see what happened. So maybe I'll do something shorter next week. Take care. I'm going to be doing something really soon about a writer. I need to know how he wants me to refer to him. His book is called The Unbearable Heaviness of Being, I think. And he calls it himself, he's just published it in e-form, he calls it the most important book ever written. And I would like to speak to that. Not in the way that you might expect. I don't think. I don't think he needs to be ridiculed. But it's an interesting phenomenon, and multifaceted. And I expect to talk about that tomorrow. Thanks.